Today, we welcome to Global Citizenship Education Interview Series, Giorgio Marinoni. Giorgio Marinoni has been the manager of higher education and internationalization and the International Association of Universities, IAU, since February 2015. He oversees internationalization as one of the 4 strategic priorities of the association. Among his responsibility at IAU are research project, advisory services, and external representation of the association concerning internationalization. He is the coordinator of the ISAS 2.0 program of advisory services for advancing internationalization and the coordinator of the Network of International Education Associations, NIEA, a global network of non-profit, non-governmental association whose main stated purpose is to advance international higher education. He has published a report of the 5th Global Survey on the internationalization of higher education and the 1st and 2nd Global Surveys on the impact of COVID-19 on higher education. He is also the coordinator of the 6th Global Survey on the internationalization of higher education. Additionally, he is a member of the European Network on International Student Mobility, Connecting Research and Practice. Before his current position at IAU, Giorgio Marinoni worked for UNICA, the network of universities from the capitals of Europe in the field of internationalization, higher education policy, and reform at the European level and beyond. He has been an active member of the Erasmus Students Network, ESN, at the local, national, and international levels, and served as the ESN president from 2007 to 2008. So welcome, Giorgio. It's a pleasure to have you here with us at Global Citizenship Education Interview Series.
Thank you very much, Emiliano, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to all our listeners, depending on where you are based. It's a great pleasure for me being here and having the opportunity of sharing with you my own perspective and the perspective of International Association of Universities on such an important topic.
Thank you, Giorgio. Thank you. And I'd like to begin this conversation with a straightforward question. And the question is, what does internationalization mean? Why is it important, and how does it relate to the concept of global citizenship education?
Yeah, thank you very much. Here I would start from saying that the International Association of Universities, for which I'm working, it's really involved in internationalization of higher education since the foundation of the association, since the 1950. And internationalization has always been one of the core aspects of the work of the association, up to the point with that we contributed even to the definition of internationalization of higher education, one among many definitions that exist of internationalization of higher education. This is something important to state. And the definition that we contributed to was the definition that was created in 2015 by Professor Hans de Witt and Fiona Hunter, together with us. At the time was our Secretary General Eva Egron-Polak, and the European Association for International Education. At the time, President was Laura Howard. And in a study for the European Parliament, they updated one very famous definition of internationalization of higher education, which was a definition by Professor Jane Knight at the University of Toronto in Canada, by adding some aspects to this definition, which, if you allow me, I will cite it, which
Absolutely.
is that internationalization of higher education is the intentional process of integrating an international, intercultural, or global dimension into the purposes, function, and delivery of post-secondary education in order to enhance the quality of education and research for all students and staff and to make a meaningful contribution to society. So which aspects of this definition are important and which are the aspects that let's say, went a little bit further than the definition of Professor Knight. The first one is the intentionality of the process, the fact that internationalization is an intentional process undertaken by higher education institution. It's not a passive experience. It's not something that higher education institution adhere to or are just following a flow, but it's something that they want to do. This, I think, it's absolutely fundamental. Second aspect, which is absolutely fundamental in our understanding of internationalization, is that internationalization is not a goal in itself, but is a means of enhancing quality and excellence of higher education and research and service to society. This, I think, is the second aspect, very important. And the third aspect, which is in this definition, is that should be for everybody. So internationalization is not an elitist endeavor, but it's really something that should be beneficial for all students, for all staff, and for all stakeholders involved in the university life. And the final aim is to make a meaningful contribution to society.
This is quite important, core.
Yes, and in this sense, then it's clear how internationalization connect with global citizens education, because if we look at the definition of global citizen education by UNESCO, it's an education that allow learners of all ages to become decent and respectful human beings. So we can see the societal aspect of global citizen education, and the fact that global citizen education allows individuals to live and thrive in a rapidly changing world. So we can immediately see this connection of, let me allow saying, a kind of humanistic approach to internationalization of higher education and global citizenship, but especially a social approach to both concepts. And internationalization was main rationale is really to improve society. And I think this is something that we really stress, and we even use it as tagline in our work of in internationalization. We stand for an internationalization for society and the global common good.
And indeed, we had here Professor Hans de Witt, who mentioned and stressed the importance of internationalization of higher education as a tool to contribute to society, as a mean to contribute to society. So it's good that you, Giorgio, you're also emphasizing that aspect. And I think this relates to a second question that I'd like to ask you. As an educator, as a professional, how has internationalization and global citizenship played a role in your journey? And additionally, what are your insights on the future of these concepts post-COVID-19?
Yeah, I would say that all my professional career has been shaped by internationalization and in a way also by global citizen education. My academic background is completely different from what I'm working in at the moment. I mean, I was formed as a scientist. I'm a chemist, so I graduated in chemistry. My initial career was the career of a researcher. But I had the opportunity during my career to change field of work from science, from chemistry to education, and higher education in particular. And I did that because I started engaging, as you read my biography at the beginning, I started engaging in a student association, in Erasmus Student Network. So I started, like, let's say, by working as a volunteer in the field of internationalization on international student mobility. But then I had the opportunity of moving on in that association and start working, let's say, more on a more theoretical concept, also from being president of Erasmus Student Network on the issues of student mobility and internationalization. And from there on, I really realized that was the field that I was passionate for, and I decided to switch. And then when I started working for Unica, I had the opportunity to work on topics related to the Bologna process, the European education area. So, I mean, let's say my path in internationalization of higher education, it was very important. And at that time, for me, my own formation in global citizenship was fundamental, because I started, let's say, from the grassroots, I would say, with working with international students and learning by doing somehow, like confronting myself with people of different cultures and nationalities.
What kind of core lessons did you learn having the opportunity to relate to such a diverse group of students and people? Just briefly, two or three.
Few of them. First of all, I understood, if there was not clear in my mind before, that in the world, wherever I have been and whoever I met, I only found human beings with their good points and with their bad points. But at the end, I mean, this common sense of shared humanities, it's absolutely fundamental. And I think this is something that we need to stress even more in these times where people are trying to retract to identity that sometimes are a bit artificial. Because the other second lesson that I learned is that the more you interact with people that you believe they are different from you, the more you understand that actually you are also different from what you think you are. And actually, this process of it's a mutual learning process. I think when you confront yourself with people of different culture, of different backgrounds, you are not only learning something new about them, but I think you are also learning something new about yourself, and you are trying to reposition your thoughts, your belief. And I think that's really a great process of growing as an individual, as a human being. These, for me, are the two main lessons learned of this whole interaction with the different. I put it in brackets.
we value differences. That's a very interesting lesson. All right, so I'd like now to focus on a third question, and the question is your recent projects with the International Association of Universities, perhaps a core project or a couple of core projects that are really meaningful to you, and I'm confident that would be very interesting to our audience as well.
Yeah, I might mention two, if I have to choose among many that we have. I think one is our main research projects that we have, the global surveys on internationalization of higher education. We recently conduct the 6th edition this year from January to June. And these global surveys, why are they important in the field of internationalization? Because they are the only institutional surveys at global level. We conduct them every more or less 5 years. We conducted the 6th edition, as I said, this year. And these surveys are really meaningful because they allow to have the institutional perspective on internationalization around the world. And fortunately enough, we usually have enough replies also to have regional perspective. So we can have a state of the art of internationalization and trends in internationalization at a global level, but also in different regions of the world. So we can perceive the differences between one region and the other. And I think these surveys are really fundamental for us also to do all other action that we are doing as International Association of Universities. And here I will mention just another one, which is
just to Giorgio, a quick question. What are a couple of insights emerging from this 6th global survey based on what you've been learning so far?
Yeah, maybe the survey was quite long, but I would just very quickly mention some of them. One thing is that it's clear that for the second time in a row after the 5th edition, that the main benefit of internationalization identified by higher education institutions around the world is enhanced cooperation and international cooperation and capacity building. Which is surprising somehow. It was surprising 5 years ago, but I mean, this is clearly the benefit now for the second time in a row identified by education institution. However, this does not translate yet in attention on international cooperation and capacity building at the action level. At the action level, we see that mobility is still the most important one.
Yeah.
But we are seeing a trend in increasing the importance of activities in international cooperation and capacity building. So this one, I think it's one important issue that is coming out from the survey. Then I can mention a couple of others. The second one is that the landscape out there is very diverse, and this we see it in many different aspects. And one aspect of them is the risk and the challenges to internationalization. According to our survey, there is no one common risk or challenge around the world. There are many of them, and some of them are more important in some regions of the world, and some others are more important in other regions of the world. But sometimes some of them might depend even to the type of the institution. So we are not able from our survey to understand this complex variety. I think this is a very important message, that the world of internationalization is complex. That's That's another point that I would like to make. And the last one, still emerging from the survey, it's about some new trends and some important trends in internationalization. And I will just mention one, which is the link between internationalization and sustainable development. And here I'm really pleased with the results of the survey, because the results of the surveys are showing that the link between internationalization and sustainable development is quite well established in many higher education institutions. When I say well established, I mean that it also goes beyond the simple discussion between internationalization and environment and climate action, which is quite high in the agenda of many higher education institutions. But really, we see that we go also beyond that, and we see the link between internationalization and the sustainable development goals. And many higher education institutions are telling us that they see internationalization as a mean to achieve sustainable development, which is one of the things that we are also promoting at the International Association of Universities.
Interesting. And then you were about to mention the second core project.
Yes, I wanted to mention the second core project, which is our advisory services in internationalization. And this is also one of the reasons why are we conducting research. Us as International Association of University, we're not a research center, but we kind of have the privilege of being a global association of institutions. So we have the privilege of having easy access to our members from different parts of the world. But why are we conducting research is really to understand the world out there in order to then inform our work and in order to do, for instance, inform advocacy. If I mentioned you at the beginning, our vision of internationalization. And of course, in order to promote that vision of internationalization, we need to know how internationalization is actually taking shape. But the second one is also to provide advisory services to support institutions around the world in creating or revising their internationalization strategies and activities. And here I want to mention, for instance, that your own university, where you're coming from, Toyo University, has been one of the universities that did this type of advisory service, and it was a very interesting process for Toyo, for the university, but also for us. And actually, I'm very happy because Toyo University is one of the few universities that even published the report of the group of experts brought by the International Association of Universities to show how this process was useful for them and promote it to other higher education institutions in Japan, but also all around the world.
What was your experience in Japan in terms of internationalization of higher education? Not only exclusively related to Toyo, of course, but more in general.
In general, I think my personal experience was very interesting. I found a country that really wants to open up to the world, but it has some challenges to overcome.
For example,
a country that, for example, the language barrier, it's very important. There was one issue that I remember quite clearly. They said, we want to internationalize, so we just have to teach in English and we have to do courses in English. Yeah, but actually that's not exactly the way it works, because in order to have courses in English and to teach in English, you need to have professors who are able to do that, and you should have also students who are able to learn it. Otherwise, the quality is not there. So it's much more complex. And at the same time, I found a country which is on one end really willing to improve and to open up to the world, but on the other hand also very traditional and very proud of its own tradition and culture. But these two things are not necessarily contradictory. I think you can also use and leverage your own culture and your own specificity and open it up to the world and attract other people from around the world, especially because of that reason, because they're interested in learning your own experiences,
valuing the local and the global, the so-called global.
Absolutely.
And this leads us to a final question, and that was a very interesting conversation with you, Giorgio. But I want to ask you a final question. Is a challenging one, and the question is: could you define internationalization and global citizenship using just 3 keywords, and why these specific 3 words?
Okay, this one I have to admit that I prepare it, and I have to admit that I also have completely stolen it from the UNESCO,
Right.
because I really like it. I like the tagline that they use to define global citizen education, and they use exactly 3 words, and they are just saying beyond borders and differences. And I think this is really like the essence of what internationalization and global citizenship is about. So we
Right.
move beyond borders. So we move out of national barriers, but we also move beyond differences. Moving beyond differences does not mean to say that differences are not there.
Right.
But we move beyond differences seen as barriers, and we should value differences. And actually, we come back to what we said at the beginning.
Yes, that's right. In our
Difference is, yes, difference is absolutely something we should value, because it's just the interaction of different ideas, of different culture, of different beliefs that makes us grow. And actually, it's not even just a simple sum. Actually, 2 different ideas can generate a new idea. And it's only through this interaction of different ideas that we are getting richer. And so definitely, I like this going beyond borders and differences, and values also differences, to, at the end, value our common humanity on one end, but also our incredibly richness of different cultural and
differences. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you so much to Giorgio Marinoni with the International Association of Universities, IAU. This was a very, very interesting, rich conversation on internationalization of higher education, global citizenship, and beyond. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emiliano. It has been a great pleasure for me being here, and thank you again for having given me the opportunity to the International Association of University to share some idea and have a nice discussion with you.